baby elephant didn't cry. He just stood there, shaking, his legs cut open and dusty, while 5 wolves moved in slowly around him. They weren't running or growling. They were just waiting, like they knew there was no one coming to help. But they were wrong. Someone was coming, and she didn't even know why she was walking toward them. Let me take you back to where it all began. Lena was never someone who liked attention. She didn't take photos. She didn't share much. Most of the people she served with in the army couldn't even tell you where she was from. But when she got off that dusty truck 3 weeks ago, stepping into the dry heat of a wildlife reserve somewhere deep in East Africa, she already knew she was trying to disappear. The truth was, she hadn't come here for animals, or for adventure. She came because she needed to feel far away from everything that reminded her of the people she couldn't save. She didn't tell anyone that, though. Instead, she smiled, said, "I'm just here to help," and started unpacking medical supplies for people who barely spoke her language. But today, everything changed. She'd gone out for a walk, not far, just to clear her head. The team was prepping for a mobile clinic run the next morning. They had tablets to sort, maps to mark, and someone had cracked a joke about Lena always walking off like a ghost. She gave them a small smile, grabbed her canteen, and started walking. The sun was starting to dip, and the ground was warm under her boots. She didn't even have a clear direction. Her feet just kept moving. Maybe she would have turned around if she hadn't heard something. Not a sound, not really. Just quiet, but the kind that makes your body pause. She looked out across a patch of grass that dipped down near a dead tree, and that's when she saw them. Wolves. 5 of them. Big, thin, focused. And in the middle of them all, a baby elephant. It wasn't moving much. The skin looked dry and cracked. One of its back legs was bleeding. And it wasn't calling for help. It wasn't running. It wasn't even trying. It was just standing there. The wolves were spaced out in a half-circle. They weren't rushing in. They were patient. They looked like they knew they had time. Like they knew that calf wasn't going to last long. Lena stopped. She didn't blink. She didn't think. She just felt her legs start walking again. Toward them. She had nothing on her. No gun. No radio. Not even her small field knife. But something in her just said no. No, not today. Not like this. She wasn't running. She wasn't yelling. She walked slowly, steady, like she'd done 1,000 times when a soldier was bleeding out and panic would only make it worse. She didn't know what the wolves would do. Maybe they'd run. Maybe they'd come at her. They didn't move. She whispered, "Hey." And that was it. Just that. The calf turned. It saw her. It didn't charge. It didn't back away. It just stared. And then it moved. Not fast. Just a few shaky steps toward her. Then another. Until it was close enough that she could see its ribs. Its eyes wide and tired. And it leaned into her. It didn't press hard. Just enough that she felt its weight. And it stayed there. Lena looked up. The wolves were still standing. Still watching. "Not today," she said quietly. "He's not yours." Still, they didn't run. They just looked at her like they didn't know what she was. And then, finally, the largest one turned. And one by one, the rest followed, slowly fading into the grass. Lena didn't move for a long time. She placed her hand gently on the calf's forehead. It was warm, scared, but breathing. She stayed with him until the sun dropped all the way behind the hills. Then she whispered, "Come on. Let's get you out of here." He followed her. He limped, but he moved. She kept checking to see if he was still behind her. He always was. Every few minutes, he would stop and look back toward the place they had left. But then he'd look at her and keep going. When they reached the edge of camp, Lena didn't know what to say. She wasn't even sure what the others would do. But the baby didn't want to leave. He stayed near her tent, close, always watching. That night, she barely slept. Not because of fear, but because for the first time in a long time, something felt different. Like she was being trusted again. Like she still had something to offer. In the morning, she stepped outside and found him still there. He looked up, stood, walked toward her. "You really don't want to go, do you?" she asked. He just pressed against her again, trunk low, as if to say, I'm still here. The next few days were slow, careful. She cleaned his leg with the same hands that used to bandage soldiers. She fed him pieces of fruit the team brought back from a nearby village. He stayed close to her, never more than a few steps away. But just when things started to feel a little calmer, the wolves came back. They didn't attack. They didn't make noise. But they were there on the hill above the camp, watching again. All five, like they hadn't forgotten, like they were waiting for something. Lena stood next to the baby, staring up at them. She didn't say anything. Neither did they. And that was the moment she knew. This wasn't over. She didn't tell the others. Not right away. The calf was too young. They wouldn't understand. And truthfully, she didn't have the right words for it either. He was just there. Every time she turned around, like he had made a quiet decision, and now there was no going back. One of the volunteers, a young guy named Reese, noticed after a few days. "Why's it following you like that?" he asked, scratching behind his ear, eyeing the calf from a distance. Lena didn't answer right away. She poured water into a bowl from a jerry can and placed it down near the shade. The calf lowered his head to drink. Reese tried again. "Did you, save it or something?" She looked at the elephant, then at Reese. "I didn't leave," she said. That was all. He didn't press. Maybe he saw something in her face. Maybe he didn't care enough to ask more. Either way, Lena was glad for the silence. Later that afternoon, she sat near the calf, now resting with his legs tucked beneath him. His breathing was slow, steady. There was a soft clicking sound from his trunk every now and then as he dreamt. She didn't know what elephants dreamed of. Maybe water. Maybe their mothers. Maybe just safety. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small field notebook. No pen. Just the book. She hadn't written in it since her last deployment. She didn't know what to write now either. So instead, she just said it out loud. "I don't even know your name," she whispered. "You don't know mine either." The calf didn't move. "My name's Lena." Still nothing. "But you're something else. I've seen people crawl away from danger. I've seen men cry out for their mothers. But you didn't make a sound." She glanced over at him again. "You just stood there and let yourself be seen." The baby blinked, eyes heavy. And for a moment, she felt like she wasn't speaking to an animal. She was speaking to a survivor. That night, the wolves returned again. This time, closer. She heard them first, not by sound, but by stillness. Everything else went quiet. The bugs, the wind, even the fire crackled a little softer, like it didn't want to interrupt whatever was happening outside the camp. Lena stood up, walked slowly past the tents. The calf followed. Quietly. His steps didn't stir the dust. He stayed right behind her like a shadow. They stood together just beyond the line of camp lights. And there they were, 5 wolves spaced out across the ridge. Sitting, standing, watching. They made no move to attack. No sign of fear either. Just steady eyes and still bodies. The calf took a step forward. Lena didn't stop him. He took another, then paused, then turned around and walked right back to her side. She placed a hand on his forehead. He leaned into it. The wolves didn't move. She didn't either. They stood there like that for a long time, until the wind picked up again, and the moment passed. The wolves slipped away into the dark. She didn't sleep at all that night. By morning, she had made a decision. They needed to move, not just to protect the calf, but because something deep in her gut was telling her this wasn't going to end at camp. She packed light, some fruit, a water jug, gauze, iodine, and the small first aid satchel she always kept near her boots. No radio. She knew the range was dead this far out. No phone either. What was she going to do? Take selfies with a lost elephant and send it to the team's WhatsApp? Reese tried to stop her when he saw her loading up. "Where are you going?" She shrugged, tightening the strap of her canteen. "South." "South?" He blinked. "There's nothing out there but bushland and thorn trees." "I know. And you're bringing it?" She looked at the calf. He looked back at her. "I'm not bringing him," she said. "He's coming with me." Reese lowered his voice. "What if he belongs to another herd? What if they're out there looking for him? Then we'll find them, she said. You could get killed out there, Lena. She smiled. Not with her mouth, just her eyes. I've already done that once, she said softly. This time, maybe I get to bring someone back. She didn't wait for an answer. She walked, and the baby elephant followed. They walked in silence for a long time, through dry grass that brushed against her legs, past termite mounds and small stones. The heat climbed higher, but the calf didn't fall behind. If he was tired, he didn't show it. If he was afraid, he hid it better than most people Lena had known. She didn't know what they were walking toward, but she knew what they were walking away from. She didn't know it then, but the wolves were following. Lena didn't stop walking until the sun started sinking low again. She hadn't said a word in hours. The calf hadn't made a sound either. They moved like they knew each other. No leash, no commands, just one foot after the other. She wasn't following a map. There wasn't a trail, only what looked like old elephant tracks, half lost in the dry earth. Maybe a few days old, maybe older. She didn't know, but she followed anyway. She stopped when she noticed the calf was limping more than before. His back right leg had swollen a little from the scrape. Not enough to make him cry, but enough to make her stop. Come here, she said softly, kneeling beside a short bush that offered a little shade. He stood still. His head was low, his ears flicking at flies. She took out a strip of gauze and opened her canteen. The water was warm now, but clean enough. She poured a little over the wound and cleaned it the way she'd cleaned worse things. Bullet wounds, burns, shrapnel. This was nothing compared to that. But somehow it felt more important. You're tougher than you look, she whispered. That's good. He didn't pull away. She wrapped his leg with slow, careful hands. She wasn't in a rush. She wasn't scared. Not here. When she finished, she looked up and found him watching her. Not the way animals usually look at people, but the way people look at people. Curious. Not afraid. You know I don't belong here either, she said. Maybe that's why you're still following me. He lowered his head until his trunk touched her foot. It wasn't playful. It was gentle, like a thank you. She didn't say anything after that. She just leaned back against the bush and closed her eyes for a minute. That was when she heard it. A breath. Not the elephant. Not the wind. A breath behind her. She opened her eyes, slowly. And there they were. The wolves. All 5 of them. Standing farther off now, maybe 20 yards. No growling. No sound. Just standing the way they had the first time. Watching. The calf didn't move. Lena stood slowly. She didn't reach for anything. There was nothing to reach for. She stepped forward once. The wolves didn't flinch. She didn't yell. She didn't try to scare them off. She just looked. They looked back. Something was wrong. Or maybe right. She couldn't tell. But they didn't seem hungry. They seemed calm. Too calm. The largest one, the one with a darker stripe down its back, lowered its head slightly, then turned, walking away into the tall grass. The others followed. Lena stayed still. She turned back to the calf. He hadn't run. He was just standing like he'd been expecting them. And when she looked closer, really looked, she realized something strange. He hadn't just stood his ground. He'd taken a step forward. She crouched beside him. They're not leaving us alone, she said quietly. He didn't look afraid. And that, more than anything, made her feel something in her chest she hadn't felt in years. Not fear. Not anger. Trust. That night, they found shelter in the hollow of a dry creek bed. It wasn't much, but it blocked the wind. Lena laid out her blanket and sat with her back against a large rock. The calf lay nearby, his breathing deep and steady. She stared up at the stars. No tent. No walls. No noise. Just stars. So many it made her feel small. She'd spent months under skies like this before, in war zones, in deserts. Back then, stars didn't bring peace. They brought pressure. Made her wonder who might be watching. Or aiming. But now they just looked like quiet. She looked over at the calf again. He was sleeping. His trunk twitched once in a dream. She whispered, "Where did you come from?" He didn't answer, of course. But the quiet between them felt full. Not empty. She didn't know how long she slept. Maybe a few hours. Maybe more. But she woke to a sound that didn't belong to dreams. It wasn't loud. Just the soft crush of grass. She didn't move. She opened her eyes. And there, just a few feet away, were the wolves. Closer than before. Watching. One of them sat. The others stood. And in the middle of them, something was different. The way they were looking, it wasn't just at her. It was at the calf. Like they knew him. She sat up slowly, not speaking. The calf opened his eyes. He looked at the wolves. Then at Lena. Then back again. And that was when the smallest wolf, the one with a torn ear, stepped forward. Not fast. Not slow. Just steady. Lena didn't breathe. The calf didn't run. The wolf stopped right in front of him. And then, the elephant lowered his trunk. Touched the wolf's nose. Once. Gently. No sound. No panic. No fear. Just a touch. Lena felt her chest tighten, her throat thick. She didn't understand what she was seeing. But somehow it made her feel like crying. Not from sadness. From something else. From the feeling that she was standing in the middle of something old. Something quiet. Something real. The wolf stepped back. Turned. The others followed. And once again they were gone. Lena sat in silence. The calf came over and lay beside her. His body close, warm against her leg. She reached out, resting her hand on his side. No words. Just breath. That night she didn't dream about war. She didn't wake up shaking. She didn't feel like she was running. She just slept. Like someone who wasn't alone anymore. Morning came slow and soft. The sun was still low when Lena stood up and stretched her back. Hearing the quiet pop of a joint she didn't know was stiff. She looked at the calf. He was already awake, standing beside her, waiting. She hadn't spoken a single word yet, but somehow it felt like he already knew the plan. They were going to keep moving. She tore a piece of fruit in half and held one side out to him. He took it gently. She ate the other half and smiled, though she didn't know why. She hadn't smiled in weeks, maybe months. As they walked, the ground changed. The earth was more broken now, cracked and uneven. Less grass, more dust, and something else. Footprints. Not clear, not fresh, but there. She crouched low to check. "They're not yours," she said, glancing back at the calf. Too big, too deep, older. He moved beside her, looked down at the prints, then looked up at her. "We follow them," she whispered. "Maybe this is where they went." So they did. The prince led them farther south, toward a place that looked emptier than anything she'd seen since arriving. The sun was higher now, hotter. She kept sipping from the canteen, watching his pace, ready to stop if he limped too much again. He didn't. Not once. Hours passed. Maybe 4. Maybe 5. And then the ground shifted again. Rougher now. Dry stones scattered like teeth in the dirt. Nothing green. No sound. That's when she saw it. At first, it looked like a fallen branch. But as she got closer, she slowed. The calf stayed close. It wasn't a branch. It was bone. White. Long cleaned by time and sun. Then another. And another. And then the shape of it all came into view. A skull. Large. Cracked. Still strong. Elephant. She froze. The calf walked forward. Slow. Unsure. When he reached the skull, he lowered his head. And he didn't move. He didn't cry. He didn't touch it. He just stood there. Lena stood beside him. There were no words for this moment. She knelt slowly in the dust, her hand resting gently on his side. All around them, bones stretched half buried in the earth. Ribs, legs, spines. Telling a story that nobody would ever fully know. A herd had died here. No fire. No signs of poaching. No tracks. Just silence. Just loss. Lena looked at the calf. "I'm sorry," she said softly. His head dipped lower. And then, without warning, he lay down beside the skull, curled his trunk gently against the bone, and closed his eyes. Lena didn't try to move him. She sat down in the dust, her legs crossed, the sun baking the back of her neck. She didn't check the time. She didn't speak again. They stayed like that until the sky began to dim again. quiet, still, heavy with something that didn't need explaining. And when he finally stood again, he walked to her, rested his trunk in her lap. Not heavy, just enough to let her know he was still here. She looked out at the bones one last time, and that's when she heard it. A sound. Not wind, not wolves. A low sound, distant, almost like a voice, but not human. She stood. The calf looked in the same direction. There it was again. A low rumble, far away, but real. Lena's chest tightened. She looked at the calf. He was frozen, ears wide, eyes fixed on the horizon. Another sound came, louder, clearer. Elephants, still distant, but getting closer. Lena reached slowly for her satchel. She packed everything fast, hands calm but heart racing. She looked at the calf. You hear it too, don't you? He didn't move. She stepped forward. He followed. They walked toward the sound, and neither of them looked back. The sound didn't come again for a while. That low, deep rumble had faded behind them, swallowed by the wind and the heat. But it had been enough. Enough to give her a direction. Enough to wake something in the calf that she hadn't seen until now. Hope. It was the first time she'd seen him walk ahead of her. He didn't charge. He didn't wander. He walked like he knew the way, and all she could do was follow. Not with fear, but with something else in her chest. Something tight and warm and painful all at once. She didn't speak much. There wasn't anything to say. She just kept pace, her boots sinking slightly into the dust with each step. The land around them was open and dry. No shade, no water, just low grass and broken earth. Still, the calf didn't slow. She kept watching him. The way he walked, the way his ears moved, the way he'd pause now and then, lift his head and listen. He was looking for his family. She knew that now, and she knew what it felt like. After her last deployment, she had gone home to an empty apartment. The rooms were clean, the windows were clear, but nothing in that space felt like it belonged to her anymore. It was like she'd outlived herself. And now here she was, following a baby elephant across the African savanna, wondering how much of herself she'd left behind in a country she never wanted to remember. She stopped when she felt something in the air shift. Not wind, not heat, just a feeling. She turned her head slowly, and there they were again. The wolves. Far off this time. Not close. Just dark shapes moving between tall grass. Following. Always following. She didn't say anything. The calf didn't look back. They walked until the sun was high again. Until her canteen was almost empty. Until her legs started to feel heavy. And then she saw something ahead. A dark patch in the ground. She moved faster. The calf followed. Water. Not much. Just a shallow pool where the land dipped low. She knelt beside it, cupped her hands and drank. Tasted of mud and sun. But it was cold. The calf drank beside her, his trunk dipping gently into the water. They stayed there a while, long enough to rest, long enough to breathe. She took out the fruit she had left, split it without thinking, held one half out. He ate it from her hand. No rush, no fear, just trust. She looked up again, scanning the horizon. The wolves were gone, but she didn't believe they were far. She leaned back on her elbows, let the sun hit her face, and closed her eyes for just a second. The calf rested beside her, his breath slow and steady. She spoke again. Not to him, not even to herself, just to the quiet. If we find them, your family, you're gonna leave, right? No answer. She opened her eyes. I think that's the point, that you're supposed to leave. He looked at her then, just for a second, and somehow she understood. But the thing she didn't say, the thing she couldn't say, was that she didn't know who would stay with her after that. They walked again as the light shifted toward evening. This time it felt different. The prints were newer now. She could see the curve of large feet in the soil. Still warm, still soft. They were getting closer. Every few minutes she'd look back. Nothing. No wolves. But she still felt it, that presence. That weight in the air. She didn't know what they wanted. Not food. Not violence. Just to be near. As night began to fall, she found a place to rest. A low clearing tucked between small ridges, shielded from wind. She gathered dry grass for bedding, set her blanket down, let the calf lay close. He didn't sleep right away. Neither did she. She sat with her knees pulled up, staring at the sky. It looked the same as always, but tonight it felt closer. "Do you think they'll take you back?" she asked quietly. The calf didn't move. "Do you think they'll know who you are?" Still no answer. She let her head rest on her arms. And then quietly, so quietly she almost didn't hear it, a sound drifted through the dark. Not elephants this time. A different sound. Lower. Closer. A soft rustle in the grass. She didn't move. She reached out slowly and touched the calf's side. He stirred, then stilled again. She waited. And then, from the edge of the clearing, a shape appeared. One wolf. Just one. The one with the torn ear. It walked into the moonlight, stopped, and lay down. Not close, not far, just there, watching, breathing. Lena didn't speak. She didn't move. The calf looked toward it, lifted his trunk slightly, then lowered it again. No fear, no noise. The wolf didn't come closer. It didn't have to. Lena let her head fall back again and closed her eyes. She didn't sleep deeply, but she didn't dream. When morning came, the wolf was gone, but the prints it left behind stayed. She knelt beside them, pressed her palm into the dirt. Still warm, still fresh. She looked at the calf. "We're not alone," she said softly, and they kept walking. All morning, the land around them changed. More trees, more prints, more signs of elephants, and Lena's chest began to feel tight. She was afraid, not of being attacked, not of being hurt, but of what it would mean if they found the herd and the calf left. She knew she should be hoping for that, but some part of her wasn't ready. They reached a rise around midday, and below them, in the shallow valley, were shapes. Moving, large, gray, slow. Elephants. A herd. The calf stopped, frozen, his ears wide, his eyes full. He stepped forward once, twice, then screamed. It was the first sound he had made. It echoed across the valley, strong and high and raw. Lena felt it in her chest. Below, one of the larger elephants turned, stared up at them. Then it charged. Fast, loud, fierce. The calf didn't run. Lena did. She grabbed him by the leg, pulling him back, pushing him behind her, heart slamming. The elephant below kept coming. Others followed. Trumpets, dust, rage. Lena shouted, waved her arms, backed up slowly. "Stop! Stop! We're not here to hurt you." They didn't stop. The calf screamed again, and that somehow made them pause, just for a second. Enough for Lena to pull him back behind the ridge. She crouched low, holding him close, heart pounding, chest tight. The herd didn't come over the hill. They stayed below, still, loud, watching. Lena didn't move. She didn't breathe. And slowly, one by one, the elephants turned and walked away. The calf didn't follow. He curled in beside her. And for the first time since she met him, he cried. Not loud, not wild, just soft, broken sounds, low in his chest. Lena placed both hands on his side. "I'm here," she whispered. "I've got you." And in that moment she knew this wasn't over. They had found elephants, but they hadn't found his family. Not yet. Lena stayed low behind the ridge long after the other elephants moved away because the calf would not stop shaking, and because she could feel his fear moving through her hands like a pulse she did not want to lose. He leaned into her chest, and she held him the way she once held men who were too hurt to stand and too proud to ask for help. She did not say much because words would not fix this, and because the truth was simple and heavy at the same time. That herd was not his family, and the sound he made had called to something that could not answer him the way he needed. When he finally lifted his head, she saw wet lines on his face, and she swallowed hard and said softly that it was not his fault, and that they would keep going, and that sometimes the right place is still ahead even when it hurts to turn away. He listened and stayed close, and they moved back down the slope together and walked until the ground changed again and the marks of elephants thinned and the sun leaned toward evening. She watched his steps and matched them, and she thought about how many times she had followed signs that led nowhere and how many times she had told herself to keep moving because stopping would mean facing what was behind her. The wolves came back before dark, but not close and not fast and not with hunger in their eyes. They stayed to the side and followed at a distance that felt chosen, and Lena did not chase them away because she had learned that pushing fear makes it grow. The calf noticed them too and did not pull from her, and that was when she understood that he was learning how to live with danger without letting it own him. They walked until the land dipped and she found a shallow place to rest, and she sat and rubbed his leg where the wrap had loosened, and she tightened it with care, and he watched her hands and stayed still. She spoke then because the quiet had become too full, and she said that she once froze when someone needed her, and that the sound of it still woke her at night, and that she came here to forget that moment, but that maybe forgetting was never the point. The calf did not answer, but he stayed, and that was answer enough. Night came without ceremony, and the stars were there without comment, and Lena lay back and kept one hand on his side because it helped her breathe and because it helped him sleep. She did not dream of war, and she did not dream of home, and when she woke she knew it was because something had changed. The wolves were closer than before, and the one with the torn ear stood where the calf could see him, and did not move and did not threaten and did not beg. Lena rose slowly and stepped in front of the calf, and the wolf turned his head toward the ground and then away as if to say follow or do not but know this, and then he walked and the others moved with him, and Lena made a choice she did not explain because explaining would weaken it. She followed. The path was not clear and the signs were small and easy to miss, and Lena would have missed them if the calf had not paused and pointed with his body, and she trusted him and stayed near. They found more bones as the day went on, but fewer and older, and spread thin like a story that had been told many times and worn smooth. Lena felt the weight of it and said nothing, and the calf did not stop this time, and that told her something too. They kept walking, and the wolves stayed just far enough to be seen and just close enough to matter. Near midday the calf slowed, and Lena felt the heat in his body through her hand, and she stopped and gave him water and rested him, and she thought about the line between care and control and chose care. When they moved again, the land rose and then fell and then opened, and Lena saw movement ahead that made her heart lift and then hold. Elephants again, but fewer and spaced apart and moving with a tired purpose. The calf lifted his head and made a small sound, and Lena felt the pull in her chest and hoped and feared at the same time. They stepped forward together, and this time the response was different. One female turned and watched and did not rush, and another moved closer, and the ground between them felt thin like a bridge. Lena slowed the calf with her body and waited, and the wolves stopped too, and the world held its breath. The elephants came closer, and Lena saw the signs then. The way the female leaned, and the way her leg did not bear weight, and the way the others moved around her like a circle that had learned patience. The calf saw it too, and he stepped forward and called, and the sound broke something open. The female answered low and tired and tried to move and could not, and the herd closed in and then stepped back again, and Lena understood that this was not rejection and not welcome but something harder. The mother was alive and stuck. Lena moved without thinking because thinking would slow her, and she spoke to the calf and told him to stay, and she approached with her hands open and her body small, and she kept her voice low and honest. The herd watched and did not charge, and the mother's eyes met hers, and Lena saw pain there and fear and the stubborn will to stay upright. She knelt and saw the wound, and it was old and angry and deep, and it smelled wrong, and Lena felt the old calm settle into her bones because this was her work, and this was what she had been running from and needed at the same time. She spoke to the calf and told him she would help, and she spoke to the mother and told her the same, and she knew words did not matter as much as hands and time. The wolves lay down at the edge of the clearing and did not move, and the herd held, and the calf stayed close, and the sun began to fall, and Lena opened her bag and took out what little she had and began. She cleaned and pressed and worked slow and steady and did not rush because rushing kills, and the mother held and the calf watched, and the herd stayed and the wolves stayed, and the day ended with the work unfinished and the promise heavy in the air. Lena sat back on her heels and looked at the wound and then at the sky, and she knew she would need help she did not have and time she could not spare, and she also knew she would not leave. The calf leaned into her leg and she rested her hand on his head, and the mother breathed and the herd shifted and the wolves watched, and Lena made the quiet vow she always made when the night came down around her and the choice had already been made. They would stay and she would find a way, and if the world asked her to walk away again she would not. She didn't sleep that night, not really. She leaned her back against the side of the calf, who had laid himself beside her like a warm, breathing wall, and every time she closed her eyes for longer than a few minutes, her mind would flash with what she saw in the wound. It wasn't just a scrape. It was deep. The kind of abscess that starts hidden, slowly eats through tissue, and then explodes outward when the body can't take it anymore. The swelling was already pressing into the joint. The elephant could still breathe, still shift her weight, but not much longer. The calf knew it. The herd knew it. The wolves? Somehow she wasn't sure, but they did too. When the first morning light touched the trees, Lena stood up slowly and rolled her shoulders, careful not to wake the calf. But he rose anyway, always watching, always following. She stepped toward the injured mother again, slowly. The other elephants stepped aside for her. Not completely, but enough. And when she reached the mother's side, Lena knelt and whispered out loud to no one, "Still with us." She cleaned the wound again. It looked worse in daylight. She didn't show it on her face, but her gut was tight. She needed proper surgical tools. For fluids, antibiotics. She had iodine in her bare hands. She needed help. But the radio still didn't work. The only thing she could do now was keep her alive long enough for someone to reach them. If anyone would. And if not, then she would be here. To try. And to be with her. Sometimes that was all you could do. Around midday, the herd moved off a short distance to graze, still watching. The calf stayed with Lena. He never left her side. Not once. When she stood, he stood. When she moved toward the mother, he followed. When she sat back on her pack and rubbed her face with dirty hands, he curled his trunk against her shoulder and just stayed. It was the kind of quiet presence that doesn't ask anything from you. The kind people forget how to give. She told him a story then while pressing gauze against the wound. She didn't even plan to. "There was this boy once," she said quietly. 19. From Georgia. First time he left home was basic training. First time he left the country was with us. We were out near the wire when the blast hit. Her voice didn't change. Her hands kept working, but her throat thickened a little. I froze, just for a second, and he bled out before I could get to him. They told me it wasn't my fault, that it was too late either way, but I still hear it. That pause, that sound. The calf didn't move. He didn't even get to finish writing the letter in his pocket. She didn't say more after that. She just pressed down on the gauze and held it there until her fingers cramped. That night, the wolves came closer again. They didn't pace. They didn't lie down this time. They sat, upright, alert, facing outward, like guards. Lena noticed it first. She looked out toward the trees and realized they weren't watching her. Or the calf. Or the herd. They were watching the dark. She sat up straighter. One of the wolves turned its head toward her. Just for a moment. Then faced forward again. It was a warning. She got to her feet slowly and listened. Nothing. Then a crack. Distant. Low. Too heavy for a branch. Too soft for thunder. Something else. Movement. She turned toward the herd. They were still calm. But their ears twitched. Something was out there. And it wasn't a wolf. She didn't wake the calf. He was already up, watching her, as if he felt it too. She kept her hand on his back, letting her breath slow. The wolves didn't move, but their bodies were tense now, ready, focused. Then, silence again, past, whatever it was. But the message was clear. This place was not safe for long. In the early morning, Lena began to walk toward higher ground to try the radio again. The calf followed, of course. She stopped midway up the slope and raised the antenna. Held it high, turned her body slow, angle by angle. Nothing. Static. She tried again. And again. On the fifth try, a voice crackled through. Barely audible. "Hello. Do you copy?" Her throat closed. She pressed the button. "This is Lena Rose. Medic. We're southeast of Station 3. I have a wounded adult elephant. And a calf." Pause. Then, "Say again, Lena. Did you say calf?" "Yes. Alive. Staying with me." Another pause. Then, "Lena, we thought you were dead." She closed her eyes. Let the wind pass over her face. "Not yet," she said. "But I need help." "We're on our way," they said. She lowered the radio slowly. Looked at the calf. "We're not alone anymore." That afternoon, the sky shifted. The herd moved closer to their injured member, forming a tighter circle. The calf stayed outside it, beside Lena. The mother stirred more now, breathing stronger. Her eyes followed Lena wherever she moved. The wolves circled one more time at dusk. Not hunting, just present. She wondered if they would stay when the others came. She hoped they would. But when she turned to look for them at nightfall, they were gone. No sound, no tracks, no goodbye, just gone. And maybe that was how it needed to be. By the time the field team arrived, loud boots, worried voices, medicine packs. The calf stood proudly beside his mother. He didn't hide. He didn't cry. He watched. The vets moved quickly. They examined the wound. They praised Lena without knowing the story. They called her a hero. She didn't answer. She just stepped back and let them do what she had tried to do with her hands alone. Save her. As they worked, the calf leaned against Lena one more time. Not because he needed comfort, but because she did. And when the surgery was over, and the mother slept with bandages around her leg and medicine in her blood, Lena finally let herself sit on the ground. The stars were out. The wind had cooled. And for the first time in months, her hands weren't shaking. She looked at the calf and whispered, "You did it." He blinked once, lay down beside her, and stayed. She hadn't meant to stay. Not this long. After the field team performed the surgery, after the sedatives kicked in and the mother elephant lay motionless beneath the trees, they had told Lena she could go with them. Ride back, rest, shower, breathe. She'd said no, not with words. She just shook her head once, looked at the calf standing beside his mother, and stepped back from the open truck bed. They didn't argue. Maybe they understood. Maybe they didn't want to. By the time the last vehicle disappeared down the trail, it was just Lena, the calf, and the herd again. But something had changed. The others moved more freely now. The injured mother was still weak, still unable to stand, but her breathing was better. Her eyes were clearer. Her calf never left her side. Neither did Lena. She was sleeping in shorter pieces now, eating less, drinking only when she remembered to. The nights came colder than before, and the winds picked up, and her hands shook not from fear but from exhaustion. Still she stayed. She spent long hours talking to the mother elephant while cleaning the wound, whispering nonsense like, "You're tougher than most people I've met," and "You remind me of a sergeant I once knew, stubborn and full of fire." The elephant would blink slowly, as if to say she was listening, even if she didn't care for the details. The calf, he was calmer now, but also quieter. He watched everything, like he was memorizing it, not just her movements, but the way the herd breathed, the way the wind moved across the grass. He stood straighter too, like he was waiting for a moment that hadn't come yet. And the wolves? Gone. No tracks, no shapes in the distance, no torn-eared shadow between the trees. It was as if they had vanished completely. She missed them more than she could explain. They had been constant in a strange way. Something watching, something listening, something there. Now the silence had returned, but not the same kind. This silence had weight, pressure, a kind of waiting that didn't feel patient. She felt it the night the fever started. It wasn't sudden. It crept in. A tightness in her chest, a sharpness behind her eyes, a dryness in her mouth that water couldn't fix. She sat up from the ground too fast and the world tilted. She blinked hard and grabbed the side of the tree for balance. The calf lifted his head and took a step toward her. She forced a smile and reached out to him, but her arm felt heavy, slower than it should be. "I'm fine," she whispered. "Just tired." But she wasn't fine. By morning, she couldn't stand for long. She tried to eat. Nothing stayed down. She tried to walk. Her knees buckled. The calf stayed close. He watched every move. When she lay back down under the tree, his trunk brushed her hand and stayed there. She closed her fingers around it, weakly. "This wasn't the plan," she murmured. "You were the one I was supposed to save." The wind moved through the trees. The herd shifted slowly in the background, and Lena closed her eyes. She didn't dream, not at first. But after a while something came. Not memory, not quite. She was back in the field again. Not Africa. The other place. Dust and heat and noise. Screams in the distance. A boy's voice shouting her name. Blood on her hands. Only this time the voice was different. It wasn't the boy's voice. It was the calf. Calling her. In that deep, ancient way elephants do. Calling her back. She gasped awake, her breath catching. Her skin was soaked. The calf stood over her, eyes wide, ears pulled back. He was scared, and so was she, because she knew what it meant when your own body started pulling you under. She pushed herself up to her elbows and looked at the herd. The mother was still lying down, still breathing, but she couldn't help anyone like this. Not unless something changed. Not unless help came again. But it was days away, maybe more, and that's when she saw it. Far out in the distance. Not a wolf, not a human, something else. It moved slowly, almost floating across the open grass. She narrowed her eyes, trying to focus. It was large, alone, not an elephant, not a buffalo, but walking, upright, and gone. She blinked and it was gone. She sat up straighter, looked again. Nothing, but she knew she saw it. And the calf? He was staring at the same place, silent, unblinking. She reached for her bag and fumbled for the satellite tracker. Her fingers barely worked. She tapped the screen, but it stayed dead. The sun had drained the battery, and she hadn't charged it. She looked at the calf again. "I need to stay awake," she whispered. "I need you to help me do that." He didn't move, just stayed beside her, like he understood. She stayed conscious for another hour. Then two, sipping water, whispering anything to keep herself from slipping. At dusk, the herd gathered tighter. The mother lifted her head for the first time in a full day. She made a low sound. The calf responded. Lena watched them, mother and son. That fragile moment between strength and surrender. She felt her own body giving in. She leaned back against the trunk, head heavy, and closed her eyes. But she didn't fall asleep. She listened, to the wind, to the breath of the calf beside her, and to something else, far off again, but closer now, that same sound, that presence. Not animal, not quite human, but coming. By the second morning, Lena couldn't walk. She tried, twice. The first time, she managed to crawl to the water pouch she'd hung from a branch the day before. She drank, slowly, carefully. The second time, her knees gave out completely. She sat down hard, her breath catching, her body shaking in quiet waves. She didn't cry. She didn't curse. She just sat. And the calf didn't leave. He moved in close and placed his body beside hers like a wall, strong and silent. His trunk reached around her shoulder, not tight, just there, steady. She leaned into him, not because she needed help standing, because she needed to feel something that hadn't left. The mother elephant was standing now, just barely, her bandaged legs stiff and swollen, but holding. The herd gathered slowly, patiently, around her, shifting like a tide getting ready to move. It was time. Lena could feel it. The mother would walk again. The calf would go with her. And she would stay. And that was okay. She sat there in the morning heat, letting the sun touch her arms. The fever had broken sometime in the night, or at least stepped back. Her body was lighter, weaker, but her mind was clear. She remembered things she hadn't let herself remember. The boy with the letter, the medic tent soaked in dust and blood, the feeling of getting on the plane home and knowing she'd left something behind that she wouldn't get back. But now there was this, a small calf with a quiet heart, a herd that had once looked at her like a threat, and now looked at her like a space they'd grown used to, and wolves that had followed her across the plains, not as predators but as witnesses. She looked around. Still no sign of them. Not one track, not one sound, but she felt them, like they were still close, watching, not waiting, just present. She spoke aloud then, not to anyone, not even to herself. "Thank you," she said. Simple, true. She turned her head to the calf, now standing fully, looking toward the herd. His mother let out a low sound. A call. He stepped forward once, paused, turned, looked at Lena. That pause, Just that 1 second undid her more than any goodbye ever had. She smiled, nodded. Go, she said. You're ready. He didn't move right away. Then he did. 1 step, then another, toward her. She sat still as he came close. He reached out his trunk and brushed her face. Soft, slow, like memory, then turned, without sound, and walked to the herd. They made space for him. They always had. And as the group turned together and began moving toward the west, Lena stayed where she was, watching, not crying, just full. As they disappeared over the rise, the dust behind them dancing in slow spirals, she leaned back against the tree and exhaled. It felt like letting go of something heavy she didn't know she'd been carrying. The clearing was empty now. No sound, no movement, just stillness and peace. She stayed there for a long time, until the sun dipped low again and the shadows stretched long. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out something small. A stone, round, smooth, worn by wind and time. She'd found it near the elephant bones days before, under the calf's feet. She turned it in her hand now, feeling the weight of it. It wasn't valuable, wasn't special, except it was, because for 3 days in the middle of nowhere, something had needed her, and didn't die. She smiled, placed the stone in her shirt pocket, pressed her hand over it, and closed her eyes, not to sleep, not to disappear, but to remember. Thank you to my amazing family for staying with me until the end of this story. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed this journey, I just know you'll love what comes next. I've prepared something even more exciting and surprising that I can't wait to share with you. Just click on the end card appearing on your screen right now to watch the next one.